Remakes, remasters, reimaginings. They have become more frequent than ever, and they are not going anywhere. We live in a world where there is an overwhelming abundance of games to play. Development tools are easier to use, digital distribution moves at light speed, and gaming has grown into one of the main forms of entertainment. All of this means there is a game for almost everyone, no matter if you want to play a larger-than-life RPG, a fast-paced first-person shooter, a thoughtful indie platformer, or something far less artistic. This abundance is great for players, but it has a downside. The market has become so crowded that genuinely original games often struggle to stand out or turn a profit, especially at larger scales. And as budgets continue to grow and competition keeps intensifying, I think this is a pressure we are going to see more and more often. That is where remakes, remasters, and reimaginings slide into picture. A familiar name is simply a safer bet, especially if the original was even slightly successful. Sequels and soft reboots fall into the same category, but that's for another video. Now, making money will always be part of the equation. But video games do have genuinely good reasons to redo old titles, arguably more so than movies, which might be the only industry that loves remakes even more. And don't worry, I won't be comparing movies and games here. I know they're not the same thing. I'll just poke at movie remakes a bit, because, well, they mostly deserve it. And while we're at it, I know remasters, remakes, and reimaginings are all different approaches to revisiting an old game. But this video is not about sorting them into technical, strict categories. So, for the sake of simplicity, let's throw them into the same bag for now. Thanks. Now, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at what I believe are 3 genuinely good reasons to create a remake. The first, and probably the most obvious, is preservation through modernization. Consoles and PCs advance so quickly that many older games eventually break on new systems, or become inaccessible altogether. A remake, or a well-handled remaster, keeps them alive so that we, and future players, can actually experience them instead of watching someone else play them online. Sure, you can keep old hardware around or mess with mods, emulators, and fan-built engines, and some of those options are great, but most people don't want to store aging consoles or spend hours hacking together solutions just to make an old game work. They would rather pay a few bucks and play without friction. And modernizing a game does not automatically mean rebuilding it from scratch with shiny new graphics. The real goal is accessibility. Take the original Doom. You can buy it on Steam right now and play it in all its pixelated glory. The developers added practical updates like widescreen support, higher resolutions, smoother performance, and quality of life tweaks. But the gameplay, visual style, and atmosphere are still intact. And if you really want the authentic historical experience, you can still boot up the original DOS version. Now that is preservation at its best, and it makes me feel all fuzzy with nostalgia. All that said, the second good reason to remake a game is bringing its visuals into the modern era. If it's done right. And this if matters, so keep that in mind because we'll circle back to it. But back on track. Updated visuals and sound design can help longtime fans reconnect with the game on modern displays. And it also introduces classic games to younglings. Let's be real, if a young gamer can play a title with visuals like these, then these aren't going to look very appealing in comparison. Yeah, the example is obvious, but it proves the point. And if a good remake draws a young gamer in through slick visual presentation, maybe they stick around and discover everything else that made the original great and special. This approach also fits games far better than movies, where visual updates tend to be more about restoration than reinvention. Early games, even the well-made ones, were designed around strict hardware limitations, so their visuals and mechanics were deeply tied to what the tech could handle. Well-made movies do not age the same way. A great film from 30 years ago can still look fantastic today. A great game from the same era doesn't. The original Doom will always be iconic, but its visuals definitely don't hold up. So even though I love the original, I completely understand why younger players would pick up Doom 2016 instead. And this is fine by me, by the way, because it's absolutely, unequivocally, and 100%ly still Doom. It kept everything that made the original great and brought it into the modern age, giving the franchise a full-on resurrection. No, not that one. And even though it's technically a sequel, most new players, and even some old fans, don't see it like that. So in practice, it's much more a reimagining. And this brings me to the last good reason for remaking a game: the reinterpretation. This is where developers can fix or expand an older title. As I mentioned, the developers may have been limited by technology, budgets, or deadlines the first time. A remake gives them a chance to fully realize what they wanted the game to be, fix old gameplay or technical issues, or rebuild parts that didn't work the first time. And I don't just mean mechanics. This can also include enriching the narrative by giving characters more depth, adding new subplots, or reworking the story altogether. These narrative changes are the least common because, even when done well, they can alienate longtime fans. People can get pretty sensitive when something they grew up with suddenly changes. And of course, there's always the risk of making the story worse instead of better. It's a delicate process, but when handled carefully, it can lead to major improvements. A good example of narrative enrichment is Black Mesa, the Half-Life 1 remake. It does far better job with the entire Zen section, and smoothing the bridge into Half-Life 2.
Greetings, Eli!
While also giving the enslaved Vortigaunts more personality. I talk more about this in my Half-Life 1 video if you're interested. Back on track, Final Fantasy VII Remake does this well too. And the Dead Space remake shows how effective this approach can be, through added character voice.
Yeah, she always does.
So these remakes with the narrative fixes are pretty rare, but when they work, they are well worth it. So that is my trio of reasons. Any form of remake can lean on one, two, or all three. But if it has none, you can usually smell the cash-grabby hands from afar. And sure, there are a few smaller good reasons to remake a game that I haven't talked about, but honestly, most of those fit into the three main points I've already made. And yeah, you might have structured it differently, but you know, it's my video, so... But seriously, apart from all that, is there some universal rule, some principle that every remake should absolutely follow? What a great question, I asked myself. And yes, I think there is. In my opinion, the one thing all remakes, remasters and reimaginings should preserve above everything else is the overall feeling the original elicited. Call it atmosphere, tone, vibe, spirit, whatever you want to use. Every game has one. Some radiate it more strongly than others, yeah, but it's always there. And that feeling comes from more than just visuals. Art direction, mechanics, pacing, sound design, narrative structure, they all shape the atmosphere. Even the absence of music or ambience can be used strategically to heighten emotion. And in some cases, the rare complete silence can make any sound or visual that follows hit much harder. The games with the strongest atmospheres usually have all these elements working together, or they polish one or two to absolute perfection. And I'm happy to say that most modern remakes actually manage to preserve that original feeling. But not all. Some remakes feel like quick cash grabs, others feel unfinished, and some are technically solid but completely missed the tone that made the original special. And this is where the if done right part comes back. There is real risk involved when you give a game a new visual code. Clear example of this risk going bad is Apes Odyssey and its remake New and Tasty. The original had this eerie, oppressive, fantastical, dark and primal atmosphere that defined its entire world. The remake looks sharper and runs better, but that atmosphere, that heart of the game, is gone. It's brighter, cartoonier, and it clashes with the themes the original game was built around. I'm not going into every detail here because there's already a fantastic breakdown by another creator who covers this far better than I could. But the short version is, the remake changes the tone, and because of that, it changes the experience, and that tonal shift affects everything that follows. And if this weren't a direct remake, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But because we have the original to compare it to, and it's a fair comparison, that contrast becomes much harder to ignore. That said, I would still recommend playing the new one. It's a good game with fun and challenging gameplay. But if you're like me and don't mind retro visuals, the original delivers much stronger experience. And New and Tasty isn't the only game where original atmosphere evaporated. Remakes like the new 13, the Silent Hill HD collection, or the new Secret of Mana all suffered similar issues, among other flaws. But as I said, a lot of remakes and remasters have managed to keep the spirit of the original intact, sometimes even elevated. Shadow of the Colossus still carries that lonely, beautiful desolation. Resident Evil 2 still feels dreadful in all the right ways. Crash Bandicoot kept its playful tone across the entire Insane trilogy. And then there's one of my personal favorites, Diablo 2 Resurrected. I'll be honest, I was shocked it turned out as well as it did, especially after, well, Diablo 3 and Diablo Immortal fiascos.
Is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Thankfully, the team behind Resurrected did a fantastic job. They built a modern version while keeping the original running underneath as a blueprint. And the result is one of the most faithful recreations I've ever played. The atmosphere is exactly how I remember it. Dark, gritty, bleak, magical, full of that unmistakable tension. And every single little thing still feels like classic Diablo 2. And on top of that, we got some genuinely helpful quality of life improvements. A shared stash, auto gold pickup, this was great, and cleaner interface. So even though Diablo 2 is famous for its multiplayer, its itemization, and its replayability, the atmosphere was always the biggest draw for me, and this remaster nails it completely. And if you need proof that it is really that faithful, well, let's just say I still can get decent drops. God damn it. So yeah, maybe it's my naive optimism, but compared to the desperate remake machine of the movie industry, things in the gaming world aren't that bad. At least not yet. But what do you think? Do you like it when an older game gets remade, if it's done right? Or are you the kind of person who will always prefer the original? Well, whatever your view is, I think that as long as developers care about their work and choose to remake, remaster or reimagine a game for the right reasons, ideally while keeping the original atmosphere in mind, it can become something genuinely worthwhile. And as long as there are studios like Valve, who not only allow but actively encourage fans to create unofficial remakes, and even let other development teams release them commercially on Steam, I feel like the future of game remakes is not as bleak as some people might think. And no, Valve isn't doing this only out of kindness, they absolutely make money from it. But it's still a rare kind of openness and one I genuinely respect. I mean, can you imagine Hollywood letting fans remake Blade Runner, the Phantom Edition, and then actually letting them screen it in theaters and charge for tickets? Yeah, probably not. Because they really have taken remakes to a desperate level. I mean, look at this. Remaking an old classic into a horrible modern disappointment? Check. Remaking a recent film that didn't even have time to become old? Check. Soft rebooting a successful franchise so they can milk it for weak sequels? Check. or turning a beloved animated movie into questionable CGI experiment. Check. But thankfully, they didn't lazily remake a recent animated film into live-action version with the exact same premise. I mean, that would be the most desperate, cash-grabby, head-scratching, pathetic... Wait, what? These are not AI? Oh, what the fuck?